Good evening here from the UK and a very good morning. Thanks for getting up nice and early, Karley Banks and Dave Nolan. Welcome.
Hey, Benny. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks. Not too bad. Weather over there, I hear, is not great at the moment in Queensland.
No, I picked the wrong time to come up this week. So, yeah, that's all right.
Thanks, Benny. Hey, Karley.
How you doing, Dave?
Yeah, good. Really good. Looking forward to Southern New South Wales Southern Junior State Cup, which starts tomorrow in Wagga Wagga. So I'll be driving down there this afternoon and looking forward to a bit of tippy-tap, as you would call it.
That's the one.
Thanks for the invite, Ben. It's a really good initiative. I think probably in the wellbeing space, we're probably a little bit ignorant as a sport and we're not doing enough. So anything which brings awareness to that space in our sport is a huge thing for our community. So really, really good initiative, really, big, well done. So good to be part of it.
Very good. We've got a little bit of kickback there, so I'm just going to see if I can get rid of that. There we go. That sorted it out. Cool. So we'll get started. Look, we're really excited to have both of you join us this evening, and we'll jump straight in because I think there's going to be a lot of interest in terms of some questions at the end as well. So just to start with, and Carl, maybe you can kick us off here. Just tell a little bit about your career in touch to date, and what your journey's been like to get to the point you're at now.
Thanks, Benny. Been involved in the sport for about 35 years now. So I began playing touch when I was 14 in my hometown in Toowoomba, and been very lucky to have represented at all levels all the way through. Came through the school system that I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later on with Peter Bell. When I was a little kid, he spotted me playing in the Queensland Secondary Schools Championships when I was 14, and back then they didn't have under 15s, it was just open. So I became the youngest player to represent Queensland at school level in the Opens when I was 14, and he had a very big hand in sort of my career, both as a player and a coach. But been very lucky to have had a long and distinguished career at the Open level, and then went from the Open straight into coaching, and been doing the coaching thing now for about 15 years. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Carl. And how about you, Dave?
Yeah, I've sort of been in the sport since a teenager for 40 years now, sort of probably half my life as a player predominantly, and then a little bit of coaching, and the latter half also as a coach and a little bit of social touch. Grew up and still currently living in Parramatta, which is like a satellite city, probably an hour west of Sydney. Our area is the Scorpion region, so as a player, come through Parramatta, come through Scorpion in the Opens and also mixed. Also had a couple of games for Australia, which is probably way outside my skill level, but probably not as good as a player. But someone managed to give me a gift to play a couple of games for Aussie, which was playing for free country is always a great time in your life. Post that, the last 20 years probably being more so coaching, also mainly at Parramatta Scorpion level, and then all the way through to New South Wales, and then obviously Australia, the youth systems, and also Opens.
Oh, fantastic. So, I mean, plenty for us to sort of reflect on and talk about through the evening, and hopefully get a bit of Queensland New South Wales rivalry in the conversation as well, which would be good too.
A couple of months away,
mate. Yeah. So, just sort of moving on in terms of understanding over here just how big and competitive touch is, and particularly around club touch in Australia. Carl, I wonder if you could sort of give us a little bit of insight into sort of growing up in Queensland, Metro Cup, Queensland State Cup, schools representation, just give us a bit of insight into sort of what's that like, and all the touch you get to play there.
Yeah, I've been extremely fortunate. I'm currently sort of living in New South Wales, and have been for the last 7 years. So I sort of, have been in a great position to sort of know the best of both worlds, I suppose. We are extremely fortunate in Australia. to have, the development systems that we have, been able to play, club touch from an early age and sort of work through the school system, which are closely aligned, particularly in Queensland. New South Wales is getting better and better in terms of forming those formal ties with the schools and the New South Wales Touch Association. But it's a fairly logical progression for most young players. You'll play, club touch, and in New South Wales you can start rep touch at under 8 now, which is crazy. But go all the way through those junior state cup progressions, both in Queensland and New South Wales. Then you get the opportunity as well with the school system, and there's plenty of opportunities to branch into junior representative club sides going into your like Metro Cup in Brisbane. But outside of Brisbane, there's also really good sort of things in Queensland, like Central Queensland have a great setup. I mean, they're probably the strongest affiliate in Queensland, sort of the Rockhampton and the CQ region is absolutely booming, and a lot of hard work put in there. So it just goes to show that the isolation in terms of distances and stuff like that doesn't really sort of count. Same with like New South Wales. I'm part of the Hunter Hornets system, and we won the last 2 NTLs, and our junior systems are excellent. So I think that's the great thing in Australia, because we have access to so many great ovals and facilities and coaches, and there's a great education system happening all the way through, that players, coaches, referees, selectors, whatever the technical arm, we're very, very fortunate in that there is there's great programs and there's great progression available. So if you want to be good at touch, you've got wonderful pathways. And I think a lot of the time when we look at the way that you guys are establishing yourselves and getting better and better and better, and lots of the other countries around the world, like we can see I guess how much time and effort it's taken for you guys to get here, and a lot of the players here probably take it for granted that they have such great systems.
Yeah, no, it's so true, absolutely. And Dave, I wonder whether you could sort of give us a bit of insight into those structures Carl's talked about in New South Wales. So, State Cup, for me, playing in Borden Cup when I lived out there was just like nothing else. The idea of, Premier League touch every week was just phenomenal. But so I wonder if you could touch on that a little bit for us. Yeah,
so in New South Wales, in the Opens, which is the Premier League sort of division, we have 3 sort of main tournaments. One is Borden Cup, which runs in the winter time, Friday nights predominantly, for about 12 weeks. Then there's Country Champs, which is the weekend in between Borden Cup and State Cup. And then as you said, State Cup, which is a weekend away at Port Macquarie, which is like a round robin type scenario. I suppose it's the intensity level reference to World Cup. It's not too different. It is different, but the intensity is still there. And Borden Cup, especially at Premier League, especially coaching, I sort of equate it to a Harvard MBA in sports, I suppose, where week to week you're going up against a world-class player surrounded by players that are going to activate his good football. So every week, especially when, like I was at Penrith, probably the week would go from a cup of coffee with someone like Scott Buckley or Nick Good, and we'd work out or strategize how we're going to train, how we're going to play. We go down for an hour down the park, and you got no idea in terms of the intensity of that session. Like, it's an hour of just going hell for leather at each other at a level above game rate, and then you go Friday night and you practice your strategies at a rate, and then that continues for 12 weeks. So in terms of sporting competitiveness, in terms of tribalism, in terms of will to win, it's all that traits that you see at World Cup, and you get to do that week in, week out. So it's a great environment. State Cup, as I think maybe some of the English men's players and women's players can attest to, that it's a huge load physically. I remember seeing the English side, the men's side, post 2017 after they played a couple of games, and they were broken. And it was really, I don't know how they got through it, but it was good to see that the following year they turned up and they physically prepared well for the tournament. But yeah, the skill level of the game is intense, the physicality is intense, and you've got to do that week to week at Borden, and then at the Borden Cup, at State Cup, you get seven upwards of 7 to 10 games, and you've got to be at your best. And as Karley knows, to win those things, you got to be at your best physically, mentally, football, and then you got to have a bit of luck. And if you get all those right, maybe you get to have a dance at the grand final.
And I wonder, and Carl and Dave can jump in on this. I mean, firstly, country champs. I don't think I've ever been colder in my life, and I live in the UK now. Dubbo is not a hospitable environment in the winter. I didn't want to get out of the minibus at all. But how does sort of country champs fit into that in terms of, you're not playing the big city teams, but yet it's still such a challenging tournament for various other reasons, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. My club, the Dragons, Dawson, it's something that when we first started in 2014, that we made the priority that if we were going to compete with the likes of, Dave's coach sides, Traddy's teams, all the good ones, we had to play some touch. And so we played 5 tournaments, in the year, and country championships was one of them. And it's also for us because we know when we started getting good, we realised that, the other country teams loved, like when we go to country championships, they're standing room only. Like people stand around to watch these boys play because they admire the level of touch that they play and the way that they conduct themselves. So for us, to begin with, it was a bit of a nightmare to juggle it because it's a bit more of a relaxed tournament, as you know, Ben. And so for us, it usually falls in the week with Vorden. When we started making the grand finals, it would be the semi-final, then we would have country championships, and then the grand final. So I would be living in fear that someone was going to get injured. So I'm a bit of, as Dave knows, I'm like Dave, I'm a bit of a panic merchant when it comes to those things and a bit pedantic. So rather than let the boys have a free weekend and just enjoy themselves, I go to make sure that nobody gets injured or nobody mucks around too much and has too much of a good time, because we have to, usually back up the next weekend and play a grand final. So it's a tricky balance and a juggle in terms of that. But just the atmosphere at country championships, because you've got parks, you've got, places like Orange, stuff that Orange have now gone down to Vorden Cup. My assistant coach at Hornets, Joel Begnell, is a tremendous young guy who, has taken, his junior sides down there. They'll leave at 1 or 2 o'clock on a Friday afternoon to drive down to Sydney to play, in the Vorden Youth League, on a Friday night. Tremendous, efforts from Joel and the Orange Touch Association. But we've got, places that are sort of far and wide and stuff, and Dunedoo and places like that. And these people, country championships is the be-all and end-all for some of these people. So it's a tremendous tournament, and we love going every year. And we've made an effort to be there all the time. And so have teams like the Wollongong Devils, Terry Deegan and the boys, Toby, they always turn up. And our 2 teams get on really well. And obviously that's formed the country sort of Mavericks and the Newcastle Knights NRL Touch over the last few years. And there's a tremendous rivalry. I think we've played in the last 6 finals, and it's always close, and it's always, at the end of it, everyone can have a beer and really enjoys each other's sort of company. So I think that social aspect that Dave alluded to before about, being able to, play and sort of have your friends and stuff, those sorts of friendships that you form at tournaments like country, are just pivotal in terms of, making sure the spirit of the game sort of, thrives.
Mm. Absolutely, and you talked about those journey calls, and with Doilo starting to play in Borden Cup, you guys have got a long journey down that freeway each time you want to go. So just give us a bit of insight into sort of how that started. What was it like to begin with? Turning up to headquarters and mixing it with the city guys. How did that go?
Yeah, it was because for a few years. They've been trying to get a successful team come out of the Hunter region. And when I moved down in 2013, I started coaching the Walls End Wolves, and we sort of went in the comp and came in there with a U-Butte. Yep, we're going to do this high-performance program. And it was really hard for the people to maintain because there was a bit of an attitude if they weren't successful straight away, it was hard for them to get, to stick in it. So that first year with them, we won 1 game, but we beat Manly, which was fantastic. So later on, a team like the Central Coast, it took them 3 years to win a game in Men's Premier League, but they persevered, and now they're one of the best sides in the comp. So within that side, though, were a couple of young guys, Mitch Wilton and Lincoln Little, and they came with me when Dylan Thompson and Scott Bundy, who were playing for the Eels, they were travelling 2-3 times a week, and they wanted to come home. So it seemed like when Wallsend didn't want to continue, chasing the dream, I suppose, it became an opportunity to go to Doyleson. So Scott, Dylan, Shane Fredericks and myself linked up, and we decided that, we would, have a go at this, but we needed to be really successful the first year. Otherwise, the same thing would happen. The players would go, it's not worth travelling sometimes up to 5 hours, a 5-hour round trip for some of the guys who are at Nelson Bay or Newcastle. So, about 3 or 4 games into the season, Dylan, Scott and I, because we sort of got together and said, we've got to make this work somehow. So we just, knuckled down and tried to learn as much as we could. I was a new coach to the whole system, so I was really lucky that there were other coaches like Dave Collins, Dave, like Tradie, people like that who would give you that encouragement and support to keep going with something like that, because, I had to get a whole heap of catalogue on the intel on a whole heap of players and stuff that I didn't know about. I knew everything about Queensland Touch and the players in the Metro Cup, but I had a lot of homework to do to be able to do it. And we worked quite, collaboratively as a group. And we managed to, in that very first year, make the finals. That was our goal, just to make top 6. So back in the day, so we thought of it as like we were really, really lucky to be there. So we got in a mini bus and everyone dressed in fancy dress because it was a bit of a festival for us. And we pulled out the front of New South Wales Touch and greeted by Dean Russell, the CEO of New South Wales Touch, and he thought, "Are you guys here to just sit on the hill and have a drink and watch the games go round?" But we were just excited to be there, and we went out. We ended up taking West to a 4-on-4 drop off, and it was the weekend that the New South Wales State Conference was on. So there was a big crowd present, and we ended up getting beaten, in the 4-on-4 drop off by Benji Marshall. So Benji came back and played, and so that wasn't too shabby to go down there. But on the drive back up the highway, there was no disappointment. Everybody just turned around and looked at each other and thought, you know what, we're on to something. We need to keep persevering. And if we do this and we work hard enough, then we can, mix it with the big boys. So that was how it all sort of started.
Yeah, it's fantastic and great story. And we'll touch on a little bit of the success there a little bit later on. But Dave, I was going to say recent, but it's not so recent. But I think COVID kind of makes everything feel recent, but you've had to move yourself recently to Hills, and big change for you in terms of what you're doing there. But could you tell us a little bit about that and the new initiative and how it's all going?
Yeah, so previous to Hills, I was at Penrith with the Men's Premier League, so for 4 to 5 years, which was a great time of my life. Learned a lot about coaching at elite level. Got to spend time with guys like Scott Buckley, Jack, Nick Good, 2 of the big students of the game, academics. They love to think about and theorise about the game, and then they're world class at executing. So moving away from those guys was hard. But the Hills, my wife coaches at the Hills, my son plays at the Hills, and while I was coaching at Penrith, I was in the background mentoring most of the coaches at Hills in the Open program. So there's already a relationship there, and work had become problematic in terms of just time away. Like moving from Sydney to Penrith is in peak hour for training. It's like a 3 or 4 hour time in your life. So it just got to a point where with work and family that Hills made sense in terms of the move. There was a need there. They wanted to move in the Premier League. They needed some background support in terms of to do that. So it was a difficult move, but there was a lot of good reasons also for going there. Contrast. You got one of the best sides, similar to Dawson, at the Premier League level, at the world stage, probably one of the best club sides in the world. And you move to a club that's just moving from First Division to Premier League, which is it's a quantum leap. Karley spoke about moving Dawson from country champs into Gordon Cup, which is a quantum leap, but taking a First Division side and First Division coaches and moving into Premier League is very difficult. I remember our first training session, the head coach, which I was I'm the coaching director there, so I'm not the head coach of the Premier League. He took the session, went through it, finished, and he said, "How'd we go?" I go, "Can I take him for an hour?" So and then we sort of ramped up the session to the level that we needed to be at in terms of intensity, in terms of will to play, and the players sort of walked away astonished that that is at the level we need to be at. I go, no, we need to be better than that. So it was just an amazing sort of jump from first division to Premier League, and while we're still not competing with the big dogs, under the bonnet of the scoreboard, we're doing some really nice things, both in the women's and the men's. So I think, like Karley said, Central Coast took 2 or 3 years to get to a level now where they're one of the big names. I think Hills, they've got the volume of coaches, they've got the volume of players, and they've got the desire to be there. So it's just a matter of time. But it's sliding doors where you go from one of the best sides to one of the best development teams. So it's a nice transition, and it's a good little project for us.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds it. And I watched a lot of Hills actually at the last State Cup in December, particularly the women's. And I mean, they're playing some really good touch, but just the progression over the course of the tournament as well was phenomenal. Yeah,
like the average age is like 17 or 18. So it's just, we had a game against the big dogs, Manly, and we put it to them.
Yeah,
we had moments there where I thought, wow, we've really come forward in leaps and bounds, and we're at the stage. And the players, it's funny, those moments that that no one ever sees and no one ever hears about, but that 10 minutes after the game where you see the players and they're emotionally and physically spent, they put everything in. So that was a really, really nice game. The players knew at that moment that they could compete against the best in Australia, and the best, those girls are pretty much Australian players, which is the best players in the world. So we're transitioning really well. It's a good group.
Good.
A lot of youth.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I think that every year, I think the game just gets faster. I refereed our 16 boys and 18 boys Hill side the other night, and they broke me. I couldn't keep up. The game's getting faster and faster, which is what we want.
It's a challenge, like you say, when you're coming up against the best players in the world on a weekly basis. So unsurprising.
After that Manly game, Zara Nichols, who's an Australian mixed player, like coach, she came and saw me and said, "Wow, we don't want to meet you guys in the quarters." So it was a nice little comment from her. So.
Yeah, best kind of praise, huh?
Yes, acknowledgement of not just the scoreboard, but the activity below the scoreboard, which is, as coaches, is what we can control.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think what's brilliant is that, I mean, we're talking about the club game here, and both of you still so active in the club game, and you guys are actually coaching at the very top of the game in terms of global touch as well. So we could just rewind a bit in terms of, when did you guys start to get into sort of representative coaching and start to move into sort of regional, state level, national level coaching? Karl, I don't know whether you want to kick us off there.
Yeah, for me, coaching, I went to a school, I got a scholarship to a school in Toowoomba called St Saviour's College, an all-girls Catholic school, and the nuns thought that touch was an unladylike sport. So I got the shock of my life. I thought I was going to this school to sort of be able to, play touch as well as sort of get a really good education. And so I had to get all my friends to sign a petition, and I had to go and butter up our principal, Sister Moira, and I got my mum to come on board. They said, who's going to coach the team? And so I got my religion teacher who knew nothing about touch, absolutely nothing. She just stand in the sub box, and I got conned all my friends who were netballers, never played touch in their life. And my coaching journey started there because I had to teach my friends how to play a game that they'd never played before. And so some of the little ball skill games, because I'm a professional coach and that's what I do, and skill development's a big area of interest for me. So a lot of the drills that I've been able to create, a lot of them had their origin back, on a tiny little field, in a tiny school of 500 kids, where I sort of caught the coaching bug whilst I was, obviously still playing, and I was like a 15-year-old kid. So to me, I've always had that interest in coaching. I was very lucky to play, at every level, representing Queensland and Australia. Had a really, really good career and was able to do all of those things. I also was able to go and play like rugby league for Australia and represented Queensland in 5 different sports. So I had a great sporting career as an athlete. but I always had an interest in coaching. So while still a player, I would help, which is great. We see this a lot now with all the players, and Dave will say this about all of the players, you know, a lot of the rep players he coaches. Everybody chips in at Junior State Cup. Every one of my guys at Doilo coaches a Junior State Cup team. You know, rather if it's Nelson Bay, if it's Wallsend, wherever they were originally from, you know, Doilo, whatever, they're all out there giving back to the sport. And I think that when you're a player and you've got something to offer, it really, really helps you also understand what your coaches go through. So those boys are a lot more tolerant and patient now, given that they understand that, you know, 7:30 means 7:30, boys, not 7:35, not 7:40. I heard a couple of them complaining about tardiness with some of their Junior State Cup teams, and I thought, yeah, welcome to my world, boys. And it was sort of like one of those things. But very, very fortunate to have had really, really good coaches with attitude. Like as a kid, like having that pay it forward type attitude, that if somebody's been good enough to introduce you to the game and contribute to you and make you a better player and a person, such a wonderful opportunity to give something back to somebody else. And it's not overstating what we do as a coach, but you've got to be a lot of things. You know, you're an amateur psychologist, you're a physician, you're doing a lot of things on the run for people. But seeing a young kid be able to do, you know, a slide dive. Like this year I'm coaching in Queensland. I'm coaching the under 10 Redlands Junior State Cup boys. My nephew Cooper is a very keen player, and he told me that forget about Origin, forget about coaching Australia, Auntie Karley. Your focus needs to be on the Junior State Cup for the under 10s for Redlands. So, you know, to me, you know, I love doing, you know, the little gigs, and I love doing the big gigs. And to me, it's all just about giving back to the sport as much as you can, because so many people gave up their time to help make me the player, the person, the coach that I am. So to me, it's just, you know, a wonderful opportunity to give back, Ben, and you know, that progression into all the other grades. Some of it was, you know, by design, I suppose, in terms of once you get that coaching bug, you really want to just coach at the highest level that you're capable, you know, of coaching, because I guess I have a great, you know, I love all the tactics and I love all the analysis, and I'm like Dave, like that's sort of my sort of little nook and cranny as well, is that I really love the tactics and all of that side of things. So to me, you know, getting the opportunity to sort of work my way through from Junior State Cup level, you know, come through and coach at school all that time, and then, you know, just, you know, apply for representative jobs and sort of make yourself way through that system. I was incredibly fortunate, you know, to be able to go through there. Obviously had a lot of highs and a lot of lows before, you know, I guess it's a second sort of birth for me as a coach, and we can probably talk about that later. But, you know, there's definitely two distinct, you know, junctures in my coaching career, but I'm grateful for every experience, whether that was, you know, the times when I was on top or the times when I've been right down the bottom and I've had to claw my way back up. But you know, coaching is just a wonderful, wonderful avenue for people to give back, you know, to a community, whether it's, you know, like at your local level or it's representative level. Just a tremendous thing to be able to do. So, you know, I'm very, very fortunate to be able to do the things that I do, Ben.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I mean, I remember a junior session with you at South Queensland border district. So I absolutely get what you mean, and I can still remember your passion at such a young age as well. So, you know, I can vouch for you there from first-hand experience.
Oh, good. Hopefully I wasn't too cranky at you for being late, Benny.
The Ballina boys were always late when we made those merit squads, so I definitely would have been running laps, I think. How about yourself, Dave?
Yeah, probably similar. I distinctly remember like being on tour with the Australian side, playing for Australia. You know, having that feeling of, wow, I've had such a great week, and you know, the sport of touch has given me so much as a person. I met my wife 35 years ago through touch. Obviously played at representative level, had lots and lots of friends, met lots of great people. It's one of those moments in your life that you think, wow, I'm going to go back home and give back to the sport any way I can. So that pretty much was the end of my playing career within 2 years, and I got into coaching. Didn't really get into coaching to be an Australian coach. You know, 1 minute you're coaching kids down the park, and next minute you're at the Australian level. So that wasn't really a planned progression. But yeah, I've just been blessed, like Karley, to be, you know, given access to so many great players and so many great teams and so many great tournaments. And there's so many great moments, you know, off the scoreboard, like everyone has in the sport, that, you know, enriches our lives. So it's been a good time. Been very lucky, been very fortunate. I think every time that you get to represent your country is a huge honour. So that doesn't go by the wayside at any moment. So yeah, just really appreciative of the friendships made in touch, the ability for me to give back to the game, either as a coach or as an administrator, the ability to you know, enhance someone else's life in terms of their performance, in terms of their engagement in life as well, is also a great thing. So yeah, there's a lot of nice stories in the background, a lot of great memories, and I'm sure there's a lot of more good footy to had, and a lot more memories to make moving forward. So it's a great industry, great sport. So happy that it's been part of my life.
Yeah, look, there's a theme here as well, and as a precursor to everyone watching, this is not something that I've prepped Dave and Carl's on, but I'm just thinking off the top here in terms of how much you both give back to other coaches all around the world. And Carl, you know, your travels, whether it be Chile, you know, as I said, lots of people getting in touch with me saying, yeah, I remember at Paris, that kind of thing. And yeah, just very selfless with your time. And you know, I'm assuming you both really enjoy that aspect of it as well, in terms of working with other countries and things like that.
Yeah, Ben, it's one of the great things. It's this great, you know, spirit of the game and brotherhood of coaching that you feel a part of and feel connected to. And any time that you can, you know, pass on something to someone else, like, you're learning yourself the whole time. And I think it's maintaining that whole you know, grounded approach that, you know, you don't know everything, and it's really important to listen to other people and appreciate their perspectives and the way that they do things, because there's merit in everything, and it's just about seeing other people's perspectives. And when you're quite creative, I know for me, like I guess, you know, Dave and I are quite innovative coaches, and we'll try things and we'll do things a little bit differently. And sometimes, you know, what people don't initially understand, they often throw the shutters up straight away. So it takes a little bit. Coaching's one of those things, but if you don't get outside of your square, you know, one of my favorite quotes is like, Mark Twain said, you know, there's one sure way of avoiding criticism: say nothing, do nothing, be nothing. You know, so I've always sort of, you know, subscribe to that type of thing with my sort of coaching, and went, you know, I'd rather get in and do what I can to help, and try and sort of throw up some ideas. And if people look at that and go, yep, that's really good, I might take something out of it. It's like a smorgasbord. You know, you go there and you take what you like from, you know, people who are generous with their time, and guys like Dave, like Tony Trad, Peter Bell, Ian Stanley before that. I mean, I have so many people who I am so, you know, I'll be forever indebted to for showing me different things in terms of, you know, how to be, you know, a better coach. But I also go and watch other sports, and I see like an under-12s hockey coach, you know, doing like a little drill with their kids, and I think, wow, that's so fun. I love that, or that's really good, and they teach me things. And I think wherever you've got that attitude and that level of respect for, you know, everybody within the sport, you are going to be in a position to learn things, and you're going to be in a position to be better. It's when you think you've got it all sussed and you think you can't learn anything and your way's the right way, that, you know, you're cutting off so many avenues to yourself. So I'd say to any coaches out there, keep an open mind, keep wanting to learn, ask questions. You know, the number of people who pick up the phone, and like, I would probably look on my phone now and there's probably 15 different messages from coaches all around the world asking questions, and I try and get back to everyone. And I know Dave's the same, Traddy, all of these really, really good coaches, you know, when you're on your way out, and like, you're in a privileged position. Like what we do and being able to operate at the level we do, it comes with a level of responsibility, and you should be really happy to have that responsibility, because it's an honour to be able to play a small part in trying to help other people develop. So to me, you know, it's not a chore, it's not a big deal, it's something that people did for me, so I'd like to do for other people.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, Dave, you've had a little bit to do with England Touch and your interactions with the Men's Open in particular. So I don't know whether you want to sort of share a little bit of insight there as well.
Yeah, so I've been sort of in the background. First of all, I met Dom Tripp in the Elite 8 system back when coaching Sydney Scorpions, and he come and played the Sydney Scorpions. That was there's a few good stories there too. I'm sure that Dom can talk about in the background, but yeah.
Dave, I remember having some conversations with him actually just outside Lidcombe Station whilst he was over there at one point. So plenty of stories.
I remember our first training session. Well, it wasn't really a training session; it was a trial match against the Australian Men's Opens. So here's Dom Tripp, who's all the way from England, great athlete, great footy player, in amongst the Scorpions, who the way the Scorpions play their football, it's more freelance, it's heads up, there's no structure, they play what's in front, and poor old Dom, it was a baptism of fire for him. So it's a great segue into the elite sport in Australia, but he did really well. Amazing athlete, amazing guy. Yeah, it's good. So yeah, been working with Tim in the background for 18 months, 24 months. It's been a bit of a journey, and like Karley said, I think when you open yourself up to learning, and teaching and helping people, you also grow as a person. So much like any player out there coaching, as a player and then becoming a coach, becoming a coach makes you a better player. And then likewise, when you're a coach and then you start to help and mentor other people, that actually makes you a better coach. So the relationship I've had with Tim has been great. Sort of progressed from trying to get on the same track as in terms of what we're seeing as in terms of footy. Okay, so the different brands of football, and then once we get on track on what we're seeing, then understanding what good looks like in terms of attack, in terms of defence, and then going in the background of working out how do we best coach that, whether it be visual resources, whether it be the way the dialogue we use. So that's been a really good and interesting association, and with the initiative around COVID, it's given us more time to work on clear initiatives around that. So yeah, I've been working hard in the background for Tim.
Fantastic. So Carl, back to you, and just one question I'm sure lots of people really want to get a bit of insight into is, lots of experience in the men's game, female coach in the men's game. How did you sort of break into that? And have there been challenges? Are there still challenges? Clearly there's lots of success. So I wonder if you could just share with us sort of your experiences there.
Yeah, I guess I was quite fortunate in that in, I think, 2007, I'm very good friends with the Judd twins, Christy and Amanda, and I was working for Touch Football Australia doing communications at that stage, and I went down and did like a Vorden Cup sort of thing, and it was the last round of the Vorden Cup, and the East men were playing as well because Christy and AJ played for the East girls, and legendary players for Australia, and some of the greatest ever. And anyway, their boys had finished like second last, I think, in the Vorden Cup, and I was sort of working. I'd been involved with the Australian Mixed Open. I'd been the assistant coach of the Australian Mixed Open at South Africa and stuff. So I was getting a bit of a reputation in terms of whether it was men's or women's or mixed. I didn't really mind in terms of coaching, but I hadn't coached a men's side. And Chris Johnson was coaching the East boys, and he was playing as well. And Christian Frost and like Manu Wakely, these guys were all involved, and they needed somebody to sort of, come on board and sort of give them a bit of a hand during the tournament. So I came in and I did all their warm-ups and their ball skills and sort of stuff, and did some live coaching and stuff. And we ended up remarkably making the grand final, of the State Cup. So a team that finished second last in the Vorden Cup knocks out Penrith, who won the premiership in the semi-final, which was just a fairy tale, result. And we lost to Canterbury 3-1 in the grand final. But that was my first introduction of the New South Wales State Cup. And it also gave me a bit of belief that I could actually coach men's touch. And then the year after, a lot of those boys played for the New South Wales sort of a Rebels team, and I wasn't coaching. I'd coached Open women's up to that stage and Open mixed, a bit of this and that. And the boys said, look, we don't have a coach. Do you want to coach there? So I travelled to Sydney and I coached the Sydney Rebels, and that had a guy like Matt Tope who'd been in it for about 10 years, and they hadn't managed to go anywhere near anything, and we ended up making the semi-finals in our very first in my first attempt coaching them, which was pretty good, and we ended up finishing third overall, which was a tremendous boost for that region, and it was really good for my coaching. Following year, I was Sunny Coast, had never had a men's open at NTL, so it was close to home, so I took up that gig, and it was a home NTL for us, and we put months and months into the planning and the preparation, and everyone will recall that tournament as like it was just muddy and raining, and it was just the most horrible conditions. And but again, we were lucky enough to make a semi-final. We got beaten by a very good Scorpions team at its best that have had the likes of Dylan Hennessy and the twins, like the Kennedy twins, just on fire. I mean, they're still playing great, right? But back then, imagine that, 2010, they were on fire, and they knocked us out in the semi. But that was another top 4 finish, and a real encouragement for me in terms of what I could probably do in the men's game. So a lot of people probably don't know that background, and they don't know that I had a fair amount of work, at that stage. And I pretty much was just operating, on my own without much mentoring and sort of stuff like that outside of Ian Stanley was really good. And Traddy had given me a lot of confidence in, pointing me to mixed youth positions and sort of stuff like that. And then I was lucky enough, to coach the Australian 18s in 2011. We lost the series to New Zealand, which was a bit of a tough one. It was, and like my early representative career I didn't have a great record. I think Trady and I joked that we probably had the worst starts to an international career than any other coaches. So I'm in good company. Okay, that's about all I can say for that. But I probably got elevated. And I will say this very freely, and I've said it before. I think I got elevated before I really earned being in those positions, and I say that with the greatest amount of respect to the people that appointed me. But I felt like there was a lot to do with my coaching, and for me it was more my makeup, and that has nothing to do with my gender. That has everything to do with my confidence and my maturity, and a lot of other things that I had a lot of work to do with on myself, Ben, to be able to get myself to there. When I'm not coaching, I like to watch TV series and sort of stuff, and Netflix, like most people, get away with it. And The Good Doctor is one of my favorite shows. And he says, I want to be known as a good doctor, not a good autistic doctor. And, that's the type of thing that, I don't want to be known as a good, as a female who's doing well in the men's game. I just basically, want to be, judged upon my efforts, as a coach. Of course, I'm aware of it, and there are challenges. Immediately when you walk in front of a group of males, whether they're under 10s or under, and they don't know you from a bar of soap, their first reaction is like, it's a girl. Do you really know what you're talking about? Once I start talking touch for about 2 minutes, they go, wow, okay, cool. We'll listen. We'll do what you want. And even like a recent example, and it's nobody's fault, but the World Cup, when I coached the Australian men's 35s, every game, the like referees come over, and how you've got your 14 players can only play, and if you've got 16, you cross off who's not playing. Every single game, the referee who was like, crossing off the names walked over to me, because that's the job of the manager, and said, excuse me, love, who's not playing? I said, I'm the coach, my manager's over there. So it's one of those things. It's like, it wasn't anything on purpose, but after a while, people were like, oh, cool. All right, a girl coaching, that's fine. So you get a bit of the novelty effect, and you get a bit of that. But once people actually know that you know your stuff, the respect's there. And I can say that at Doyleson, especially when I was at Sunny Coast, Chris and Ash Farrow, who were Australian men's open players, treated me with the greatest level of respect. The same thing happens at Doyleson, whether it's Dylan Thompson, Scott Bundy, Alex and Daniel Langbridge, whoever it is, the leadership group are always really, really good. And, when we're coaching players in this day and age, and Dave will probably, back this up, that it has to be a very collaborative approach with your players. And it's stupid not to be. The days of the coach standing out the front, 3 bags full, being quite autocratic about the process, which came through, a lot of the stuff that, a lot of the coaches that I saw, it was, well, you have to make sure that you look like you're in charge and that you're running the show and everything's there. So you can still do the level of preparation. And I think, speaking to both Dave and I, you probably got 2 of the most meticulously prepared coaches, in the sport. And we need to be that level and we need to do it. But the players don't need to know about all of the, the hours and hours of preparation time. They just get their clips and they can see what they need to work on, or, the recovery protocols, sorted out for them. Everything's done. Logistics are all done. Everything that has to be there. We've got our management staff sorted. The boys don't need to know all that, or the girls don't need to know all of those things. But it's really, really important that you use the resources around you and being very collaborative in your approach and utilising the strengths of your coaches' lives. With Dave saying that, he goes and he used to have his cup of coffee with, Nick or Scott or whoever it was. Same thing happens. All the good coaches, have the ability to utilise their player group. And why wouldn't you? With so much intelligence and so much foresight, within the group, you have to find everyone's strength. So for me, whether that's Dylan or whether that's Jesse Jenkins, our young winger, who's a great, great winger and reads the game well and knows his position inside out, I'll go to those guys for insights any day of the week, because it's all about what we do together and it's about nobody being any bigger than the process. And I think when you understand those things, you're able to be a very, very effective coach. But being female does have its challenges. Like obviously when the boys talk about boys things, I'll just go and do my thing and it's all good. And there's that respect obviously in the change rooms and all the other stuff that happens. But I can honestly say to you, and my Australian under-18 boys, of last year, I can't speak highly enough of the way they were, and the Australian men's 35. So there's a good snapshot of the way a female elite, a coach who's female, coaching opposite ends of the age spectrum, absolute respect from those guys, absolute compliance in terms of, team rules. And it made no difference whether I was male or female. They just treated me, like their coach and gave me the respect that I deserved. But again, you earn that respect. So, mate, it's been a very interesting journey, and I just hope that I continue, to sort of enjoy it and improve and learn things. And I would love to encourage a lot of other females to get involved coaching, whether it's coaching, females, coaching mixed, coaching, men's. You just really have to back yourself. So whether you're male or female, you are going to have doubts about your abilities as a coach, and you have crisis of confidence like everybody else at different stages. Having good mentors around you and people that you can go to makes a big difference. And I think sort of that's the thing, is that if there are female coaches out there that feel that, I can help them, get established, or help them, with some of the things that they might be grappling with, being female and that sort of, that confidence level, then I hope that, I'm more than happy to make myself available to help anybody. But same with anyone, a male coach who needs that type of encouragement. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question a little bit, Ben.
No, absolutely. And it's brilliant to hear. And I think getting more female coaches in the game is something that we're really pushing for over here. And I know you're in Oz, but you're a great role model over here for male, female coaches. So, it's fantastic to hear. Look, it'd be remiss of me not to talk about some of the success you've had in recent years, because, it's been phenomenal. Look, we'll start with that treble crown. Talk us through the campaign and the achievements.
That's a build, and Dave will tell you that, like any successful program that you build, people look at the end result and they see, like, there's a highlights reel that I wasn't really happy that got around about the Doyle boys, because their heads ended up this big for about 6 weeks. So it was a little bit of a punish for me to try and go, put that away and let's actually get to work. We start back, like I said, 2014, and we didn't have a superstar roster. Yes, we had Dylan and Scott, and that's a tremendous advantage to start with. But guys like Lincoln Little and Mitch Wilton and Dan Lanebridge, nobody had heard of them. Nobody knew who Kurt Donahue was. No one knew. They were in my school program at Hunter Sports High School. The Glacken brothers were just local juniors, like Tommy Dafter, Jake Fitzpatrick, young guys who'd been at the Dawson Club since they were 10 years old. we were very fortunate in that Dawson had won a couple of under-20 state cup titles. So Fitzpatrick, Dafter, the Glackens, they came through that type of sort of structure, playing off their own ability, not really having a lot of great structure. And I suppose when we came into the comp, we sort of realised that there was an opportunity. Like Scott and Dylan were so dominant for us that we, they played big minutes early on, the way that, say, a Hennessy plays big minutes and stuff. And it became apparent to me that I had a guy like Jared sort of Potimer in my side, who's a brilliant left to right passer. Alex Langbridge had been sent back home by the Melbourne Storm because he was the Storm under 21s cap. He'd done quite well, but he had a shoulder injury, and they basically chose to not renew his contract, which I think more fool them, because I think Alex Langbridge is quite a wonderful rugby league player as well as he is a touch player, but that's another discussion. Anyway, these guys weren't getting into the game. It was all about Dylan and Scott, and guys like Traddy and the other men on this conversation are pretty smart, and so they do their work and they make sure that these guys get nullified. So we weren't playing as well as we could have. So enter the sub box in terms of our sort of, philosophy in terms of subbing every set and getting other guys involved. And it took a little bit to convince certain players in our side that they'd actually get their hands on the ball more and they'd be much more effective. But in the end, we got there, and it took a couple of different versions of it before we got it exactly right. And around 2015-16, we started to get it a bit better, and different things started happening where we were creating flow when we were getting on and off the field, and maintaining a speed of the game that other teams found very difficult, to keep up with. But a big part of the success is, and Dave alluded to it before, about the off-field stuff that happens. Our culture became the big thing, because these guys weren't renowned for turning up to training and doing all that stuff before, somebody like me came into town. And it's one of those things that, for us, it became your form, your attitude, and your training attendance. Pretty simple checklist, right? So you do those things right, you're going to get a spot in my team every week. And the boys were fantastic. I'm just the gatekeeper of the culture. These guys are the ones that live it and breathe it and make it happen. They're the ones who are honest with their teammates and making sure that people turn up. Our trainings start at 6:30. They finish right on 8 p.m. There's no one's late. Nobody does the wrong thing. If you do, you're not playing next week. It's and so all of those things had to be put in place. And Dave will tell you, when you make a culture change like that, if the buy-in's not there, it's not going to work. And if it falls down in any way, shape or form, then the whole thing's bust. So, I can't speak highly enough of the players in terms of what they contributed and what they continue to contribute to maintain our standards, because my job is just to remind them, of the things that we all agreed upon, that this is what we're doing and this is what underpins us. And we were quite fortunate in that we just kept building, and the people that we brought into the program, Traddy always has with the Australian men's program, thing that, it's a no goose policy. So you can't have the wrong attitude and be a part of what we do. So so you have to be very, very good in terms of being a human being, as well as being obviously a good touch player, to get a pass into that inner sanctum at Dorlo. So, we chose very carefully the young kids around the area who had the right attitude. So kids like Jesse Jenkins and Kurt Donahue, they came to Dorlo training for 12 months before they even got a game. So they just turned up and jumped on the wing and defended. And it was an old school apprenticeship. And that's pretty much, I'm a bit old school. So it's about that sort of type of thing, that you earn what you get. And, that's always been a tremendous, pillar for what we do at Dorlo. So in answer to your question about the Triple Crown, that's a result of years and years and years of hard work. It's a result of the boys giving up things, of me on my birthday being at training. You just don't have a day off. Like on days when you don't feel like doing a video review, or you don't feel like talking someone through a difficult personal situation because you've got stuff going on in your own life. It's a lot of sacrifice, and it's not complaining about that. But you have to put the needs of these guys first. And one of the big things, as I always sort of alluded to or compare it to, you're in a band and you're the drummer up the back, just keeping the beat. they're the lead singers and the guitarists rocking out up front. You've got to set the mood for that and the stage for that so that they can perform and do what they do best. And what happened, with the Triple Crown is just a consequence of, and I suppose if you want to add in the NTL with the majority of the Dorlo boys playing for Hornets, winning all 4 of those titles, that's a consequence of, hard work, opportunity. Like Dave says, a bit of luck. You need a little bit of luck if you're going to win those big tournaments because everyone's so good and it's keeping your feet on the ground. And I think conversely, we had a great 2018, but 2019, after we won the NTL, there was an inevitable, I suppose, slide for us. And that came as a result of those 3 things that I said with the pillars not being as strong as they needed to be. So the training attendance, the attitude and the form weren't there. So we need to have a good hard look at ourselves and regroup again and do that. And to their everlasting credit, the boys are able to do that every single time things don't work out the way that we want. And there's no kicking stones and worrying about what we didn't, what we did badly. It said, okay, here's the problem, let's find a solution. And I think that's the thing. And that's one of Dave's favourite things. That's what I learned from him. He's very much about, we're going to deal in solutions. And I just love that philosophy. And he's had a huge impact these last couple of years on me, being able to work with him with the Australian under-20s when we won the World Cup, in that year of 2018 was tremendously, beneficial for me. So I learned plenty from him.
It's great. It's great to hear. And Dave, just moving over to you in terms of a big thing over here that a lot of people have watched and engaged with and kind of looked at in awe is the establishment of the NRL Touch premiership. And I know both of you have been involved in that, but I was wondering, Dave, just give us a bit of insight into sort of the establishment of it. What it's done for Touch over there.
So the precursor to the NRL Premiership was the Elite 8. So Elite 8 was sort of our version of Open's national tournament. So basically the CEO, Steve Mitchell, and a guy called Andrew Hill, who was on the board of Touch and also worked for NRL, they came to the Elite 8 for the very first time, saw it and went, this is a product that we can sell. And both of them had very good commercial acumen. So when you work in the TV space, they just talk about product, and they saw that as a viable product. They quickly moved to get a commercial deal, which meant that we had to move from Elite 8 to the NRL Touch Premiership, which for the players was a great thing. It's the first time that they didn't have to pay for their own way, so that was a nice thing. The other thing, which is probably difficult for the New South Wales players, but not so difficult for the Queensland guys, was the tribalism, which meant that the coaches and the entities could pick whoever they want from New South Wales, and Queensland similar, they could pick whoever they want. Queensland chose to stay more tribal in terms of the Titans, the Cowboys, and the Broncos. So they stuck with their NRL clubs. Similarly in New South Wales, we aligned to the Tigers, we aligned to the Knights, and also the Eels. And those entities were given birth. But I suppose the big thing is just the craziness of working in the TV world. Like, you get scripts before the game, and you can't. And there's a guy from Fox barking at you. You can't miss a beat down to a minute. So it's a little bit unusual, but we soon learned how to live in that world. But it's a really good environment. It's great for the players to get some TV time, some acknowledgement of all their hard work, because as you know, we're a community sport trying to be elite. So it was nice, the fact that the cost was taken care of, and they got some airtime on the TV for all their hard work, which was great. And then you buy into the tribalism that is the NRL around the clubs. So you get the rivalries between the Broncos and the Titans, and the Broncos and the Cowboys, and then you come down and bring it down to the tribalism between Queensland and the Sydney-based team. So, it's definitely an eye-opener. Crazy. It's a bit like going from Test match cricket to 2020 in terms of the build-up, the training sessions, because you had players coming in from everywhere to train, so you had more like camp-based style training sessions. And then the game, you are every week you're in a different location in Australia, which is again a challenge. But the brand of footy was good. the results were sometimes, varying in terms of performance. I'm not quite sure whether the TV had an impact on players' mentality. But yeah, it was a nice thing for the reward for the elite players in our sport. And I think in the end, the brand of footy was really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly been hugely popular over here, and lots of people tuning in to watch it, and it's the spectacle.
The other aspect that was amazing is just playing football on grounds like the SCG and Adelaide Oval. Like, you get that as an amateur person, you get to watch other people play there, but when you actually walk out on the pitch and you look around, those venues have they have their own sense of weight of history. So it's an amazing feeling.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So just moving back to sort of international theme now, and I mean, you both had a huge amount of success at the international level, and Karl, you touched on sort of some of that together as well. So I wonder if you just give people a very brief insight into sort of achievements at international level, and what it's like being the Aussie team, the team that everyone wants to beat when you're going out to these tournaments.
I'll let the boss answer that first.
Yeah, go for it, Dave.
Yeah, like I said before, like every time we get to represent your country, it's a privilege. We get access to some of the best athletes in the world. So our job is a little bit different to other countries, but we still have our challenges. I just love the fact that every time the national anthem you get to sing the national anthem in front of an audience is an amazing feeling. And then we get front row seats to the best players in the world, running their craft against the best players in the world. So it's just an amazing experience. And I think the World Cup is a great campaign, a great arena for us to play our sport. Every time I go away, and Malaysia, presented its own challenges in terms of the heat and trying to get through the round games like a marathon, trying to keep everyone healthy. It was a real challenge. And then getting to semi-finals and finals again, against the best players and teams in the world. It's something that you look forward to every time you go to do it.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Karl, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with Dave. There's nothing like standing there, and like you guys would feel it too when the English national anthem gets played. It's the same thing. Like, you have so much pride, and it's a privilege. There's only 2% of the population that get to represent your country, and you look at it and you go, wow, I'm one of these people. And sometimes you've got to pinch yourself to think that you're actually in that position, and you're very, very grateful. Been tremendously, like I said, for me, two different junctures for me. My early, career at international level wasn't great. My record wasn't fantastic. I had a lot of work to do to be given, a second opportunity. And when I was given that second opportunity after establishing myself and working very hard on myself as a coach and a person, I was given, the chance to come back, and I've been very lucky to have worked with Dave with the Australian Under-20 boys when we won the World Cup, and we were probably up, and I'm sure Dave won't mind me saying that it was a very, very talented New Zealand 20s men's team that probably athletically were probably maybe a bit better than us. If you looked at them as raw athletes, but our game plan, the way that everything was done so meticulously and attention to detail, the dedication of the boys, of the entire coaching staff, everyone at TFA, being able to have those air-conditioned tents, the protocols that Dave put in place, the preparation that the boys did with the training and the fitness and the things. I mean, I know that's a big emphasis for you guys at England Touch, and you guys are on the right pathway in terms of looking for your 1%ers and your edges there, because the stuff that I suppose Dave and I both learnt, during that campaign helped us tremendously in the next campaign that we went, because we went from the youth to the Opens and Senior World Cup the next year. So being in a position to have known, what time to do a warm-up or how to do your pool recovery, the places to eat, the places to avoid, all of those things, they're all vital in terms of you putting together the puzzle to actually win something as important as a World Cup. And people really don't understand how much of an advantage it was to do things like that. But in answer to, long story short, there's nothing greater than getting to represent your country. And if you get the opportunity to do it, then cherish it and make the most of every single second that you've got, whether, it's, getting, your Australian, jersey for the first time, or it's like for the 50th time. Like the feeling's the same. You get that, they play the national anthem, and it's, there's no better feeling.
Yeah, look, that's fantastic to hear. And Carl, I've been teed up with this question around KL, and I wonder if you could just give us a bit of insight into the first team walk you did with the boys, the under 20s in KL.
Which one was what you mean when we? Do you mean the 35s or the 20s?
No, when we went for a walk as the 20s through the.
Oh, okay. When
back at the alleys and the back of the restaurants.
Where we got lost. Where we
went
for.
Where we saw those the rats that were the size of cats.
Oh, yeah, the rats. Okay, yes, I remember. We've gone to walk.
Packs and the boys absolutely they didn't know what to do. Oh, that was
The boys didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I hate rodents. I hate snakes.
I've never seen you run so fast, Karley.
I know. Seriously, it was like, give me your jersey. I'll go and play tomorrow now. I was running so fast.
These things were like kids. They were that huge. But yeah,
they were so bad. It was scary. And it was just, but those types of stories also bind you. Like one of the young guys sort of decided that he'd take the lead. So Dave's always good for getting people to have new experiences and stuff like that. So decided to go for an explore, with our water bottles, probably not enough water bottles and stuff. We went and worked out the train system and the whatever. So, some of the boys from, CQ, they sort of took the lead on that. And we may have got a little bit lost, and we may have got a little bit, but we all did it together, and we had a good laugh, about it, sort of afterwards. And the same thing happened with the men's 35s. We decided to take an Uber back to the accommodation, and in that was my captain, Dave Zanetti, who again is Mr. Meticulous. Trevor Moran, who's one of his best friends, is probably the most OCD player that I know, and everything has to be on time. And everything has to be perfect. Like, Trev's very much like that, so you don't mess with his pre-game routines or anything like that. And the Uber drive we got us completely lost. So it was a bit uncomfortable in the back seat listening to Trev. And Dave's a really nice guy, and Dave Zanetti gave him at the end of it, because we were about 30 minutes late getting back to where we needed to be, gave him a big tip. And Trevor put his hand across the seat and he said, "Mate," he goes, "you started off really good." He goes, "but I'm off you. I've got to be honest, I'm not giving you a tip because I'm just off you." And he jumped out of the Uber and he kept walking. So we picked up his slack and paid the guy the extra. But it was funny to see Trev, sweat like that, because he was the worst possible guy in a confined space for that amount of time that you could possibly have. But we had a big laugh about it afterwards, and I'm sure you guys have got stories like that from the World Cup about different cultures and different experiences that you have. But it's just tremendous to be able to travel around, whether that's South Africa, Japan, or wherever we've been lucky enough to go and play some touch and learn. There's just that broadening of your horizons, because you've been in another country learning different things. Same thing when I've been to Switzerland or Paris or Chile or whatever it was. Like, tremendous opportunities to just be a part of a culture that you probably didn't have a lot of knowledge of beforehand.
Yeah, absolutely. Plenty of stories, certainly. So look, COVID's been a weird time for everyone, and I just wonder if you could give everyone a bit of insight into sort of what COVID's meant for you guys in Dave in a role as mixed open head coach and a new role just before COVID, and Carl's moving into the head coach of the 18s. And I know you guys got the youth Trent Tasman under your belt beforehand, but what's COVID done for you guys in terms of, has it been an opportunity to reflect, take a break, refocus, research, analyze, I suppose, within and looking outwards as well?
Yeah, so I'll go first, Carl.
Yeah, go right ahead.
We were lucky enough to get one camp in before COVID with the new squad. So we basically rebirthed our squad from last time to this time with probably 90% new players. which we thought was going to be a challenge, but in the end, it brought a fresh look. It brought new opportunities in terms of speed of execution, in terms of the change process a lot faster because the younger people were more willing to accept what we were trying to do, the buy-in. So that was really good. We got to pick the team and then pretty much run our NTLs and mid-NTLs last year. That's when COVID sort of hit Australia in a quantum way. And pretty much probably didn't affect us as badly what we're seeing with you guys in Europe. My brother lives in England, and I talk to him regularly, and another brother in Switzerland, and that's pretty much stopped the economy in terms of normality, in terms of walking around. So here, we weren't as badly affected. Like different states were, Victoria probably more affected than anywhere else. So in terms of touch, it did stop us for a little bit, for a 6 to 8 week period, from a community base, from the Hills sense point of view. At the Australia level, and probably personally struggled a little bit with conceptualizing what to do next. Like, we're creatures of habit, and we're so used to, running camps, leading into tournaments, building for that tournament, then executing a tournament. So there's just a mindset around, well, I can't run a camp. We're not going to do anything. Then there's no tournament. Well, what can we do? So it took a little while to realize that, we had to generate new habits in the new environment. So we're busy working in the background, probably not so much on touch or footy initiatives, but more leadership initiatives in terms of the leadership group and building programs. And like, I think on your weekend, you're going to have Bo Hansen come in and do a talk. So we're using Athlete Tough program throughout our leadership group. So we're still working through that. We've been able to also personally, I think as leaders, one of the things you first have to do to lead before you can lead others, you have to be able to manage your own energy. So I've been spending a lot of time getting a little bit fitter, doing a lot of reading, which has been a good meditation effect for myself. So yeah, a lot of self-development, and then working with the leadership group and just general relationship building. I think the whole thing around the COVID is that we've got to increase our conversations with our players, got to increase the positive talk, listen, do a lot of listening. So we're sort of building. Hopefully this year we get to run a camp. we plan to have a camp in February this year, but because of the lockdowns in New South Wales and Queensland, that was sort of cancelled. And now we're looking forward to running a camp post NTLs. And I think the way that the timing of stopping of the lockdowns here and the vaccines, I think that will go ahead. So I think everyone's really gearing around, first of all, NTLs, and then looking forward to having a camp post NTLs. Not quite sure if we'll get an international in this year, but then we'll look forward to moving that program to next year. So I think the challenge around internationals is also, you've got to look at it differently. You're going to go from a 4-year cycle to maybe a 2.5-year cycle. So you've got to really get your head around that. Like, I'm a pretty simple sort of guy. Like, everything I do is focused around being good for 45 minutes in 2023 with 20 people. So everything I do moves us closer towards that sort of mission. So I just got to rethink as a group, how do we get the best out of 2.5 years rather than a 4-year cycle. I think having a younger group, that will make it somewhat easier. Having JC, who's the previous assistant coach with me in the last program, like, he's world class on attack, and I'm sort of pretty good at defence. And we're bringing Jason Martin, who's a new coach, who's been in around our space for a long time, so he knows the systems as well. So it's a really good feel around the new group, and we're looking forward to getting back together. But I think, I think the big lessons is that the creatures of habit, you've got to really rethink your habits and say, well, they're not available anymore. We've got to find new habits which enable us to deliver and support our players with the end goal of being 2023 World Cup.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Really good insight. Karl, how about yourself?
Yeah, like for me, I was fortunate enough that we got our 2020 Youth Trans-Tasman in, so that, and then the day of the NTL final, that's when, there was talk that, everything was going to be closed down and sort of stuff, and we didn't really know a lot about it, so lucky to get that through with Hornets and win back-to-back NTLs, and it was good. But I remember being out that night and thinking, this is probably the last time that we're going to be traditional, after party, after touch. Last time we'll be doing this for a while. So I think we made the best of that evening socially. Not that the Dorlo boys need much encouragement to enjoy themselves after a tournament. So that'll happen, pretty well, and then you've come from that tremendous high of having those two successes early in the year, and it was a lot of work all during that November, December, January period. I was working extremely hard to try to put the background together for those sorts of platforms to sort of happen for the teams that I coach. So I was sort of full of adrenaline and really wanting to continue on and go forward with a big year. And like everyone else, COVID sort of, stopped us in our tracks. And for me, I'm a professional coach. So I coach touch for a living. So I was at Hunter Sports High School and I'd been there since 2014, and we're all on contract. So pretty much there was no job. Same with all the other, 15 other sports and people that they employ. We were all, left without a job, and I usually travel and do my KB Tippy Tap extras and get around, and that, that's my income, that's my livelihood. So I was very fortunate that in a previous life I actually gone to university. I just did that so I could play sport, by the way. But did my media and communications degree. So a friend, I think out of pity, gave me a job to do their media and communications. So that kept my hands busy. That kept my mind active in another way. So I had a job, during COVID doing that. And it was really, really tremendous because she owns a fishing company. So it was totally something I knew nothing about. So I had to, reacquaint myself with a lot of things and learn things that I didn't, that I never knew before. So that was pretty cool. I enjoyed it. My guitar playing, which is, I would describe horrible at best, became, moderately, erratic and a little bit better as we went on. And my Taylor Swift singing got better as we went, because that's pretty much what I had time to do. But I was quite fortunate in that. Obviously, because I do a lot of skills stuff and that with kids, I was able to help a lot of kids out with some things they could do, in the backyard or sort of stuff when they only had a little area to exercise in. So I helped out with stuff. I rewrote a program for the Redlands Touch Association for their 5 to 8 year olds. So the mud crabs, the mini muddies is what it's called. And I rewrote that program because I looked at some of the stuff that was, getting around for kids in that age group. And I sort of felt that, we could probably, maybe do a little bit better in this space. So it's really exciting to now see that. Now that COVID's over and done with, they started it 2 weeks ago and they've had record number of registrations for their little kids. And it's wonderful to think that the work that I did in COVID, is now translated into something really cool for these kids. Was also fairly lucky that off the field, Jamie O'Connor got a number of different people from different backgrounds in the sport to come together to work towards, a transgender equality type thing that we're working on. Look at the laws, look at the bills, try and see what we could do to contribute to the sport. That was a tremendously satisfying committee to be a part of, and we're actually at the forefront, of Australian sport doing that. And and Jamie presented that down at the SCG on a Thursday, to the under the whole Australian sporting community. And that's something that's be involved with that group of people to work on a way to access opportunities for people to play our game, regardless of gender, race, sexuality, whatever it is. It's tremendously satisfying to do those types of things. So it's been really good to be able to do that. We've obviously been working away. We'd made the decision at Dawson not to play, to go to Sydney for the first time, regardless of COVID, because I have a lot of guys that are very good rugby league players, and we've been burning the candle at both ends. And we all agreed that we probably, after 5 years of travelling up and down the highway, playing 5 tournaments a year, it was very, very hard for all of us, and we all needed to get a life at some point. So we decided that, we weren't going to play in the 2020 Forden Cup regardless, and that became a very good thing for us, because when everything was over with COVID, everyone was fresh. We got back together, given everybody an opportunity to go away and think about how we could be better, how we could do things. We're probably the most watched team in the sport. Not stupid about that. I know that, the amount of video, reconnaissance that other coaches, other teams do on us. If we had a 9:30 game at Penrith, there were 5 people watching, 4 of them would have video cameras. Like, pretty much we know that. So we have to be better. We have to be 1, 2, 3, sometimes 4 steps ahead just to maintain where we are. So the boys and I are very well aware of that. And we used our time well to try and come up with, other things and stuff. And some of them work better than others. And this NTL preparation's been a bit of a, suck and see with a few things. And, we'll try a few different things and see how we go. But no promises about how successful they'll be. But we know that we're really looking forward to the challenge in a few weeks' time, of playing against, the best teams in the game and trying to see, where we sit in it all, 12 months on.
Yeah, I mean, really interesting, and yeah, phenomenal amount of work going on despite, lots of challenges as well. This is quite an open question, so, sorry for throwing this one both of your ways, but just in terms of your approaches to coaching, and we've got a really good flavour tonight of sort of, what that's like and what both of you are all about. But I wonder if you could just give us a little bit of insight into sort of approach to innovation and what your kind of philosophies are, and, both of you bringing new things to the table all the time. It'd be just really interesting to get a bit of insight on that. Dave, I wonder if you could kick us off there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think in the modern era, especially with all the live streaming, and as Karley said, it's people videoing games and YouTube, it's very easy for coaches to fall into the complexities and get too complicated. So one of the things we try really hard at the Australian level and all levels that I coach is just simplifying the game. So if you can simplify the what, you're going to get clarity, and then if you can simplify the how, you're going to get very effective play. And then if you get a talented guy who's got clarity and is effective, you're going to get confidence. And then if you can spread that sort of philosophy and framework throughout all your footy, you're going to get great results. So I think that's the essence of my coaching is getting that simplicity throughout the footy side, the culture side, and the program side, and maintaining it. And then you throw a little bit of adversity into that mix, and that builds a bit of resilience. So yeah, on the innovation side, I think it's available to all of us. I think for me, necessity is the mother of all invention. So we all have problems. So there's always opportunities for us to explore new ways to do it. It could be like restructured things like what we did in the mix, where we went from the pocket sort of defensive system to the flatline defense. Or it could be just little things, how you run a drill, you alter a drill to get the behaviour that you want. So I think, there's opportunity for everyone out there that has problems in the sporting organisations, whether it's a touch team or whether it be an affiliate or whether it be a program level, to look at issues that you have and then go, well, how are we going to find a way to be better than we were yesterday at that issue? So yeah, I think it's always a challenge. I think in 2016, when we moved from the pocket defence at Mix to the flatline defence in 2017, I think Mick was saying in the background, there's a lot of people throwing stones at why are we doing it? Well, my mindset was we had to do it. Like we spent all of 2016 pulling around defence apart, and we just couldn't stop our own attack. So it was we just knew that the time had come for us to move to a different system. Were there challenges? Yeah, there was heaps. I still remember the first training camp where we tried to implement it. We had so many problems, and we just took the attitude that, okay, we're going to fix one issue at a time, collectively as a group, and we just moved through it. We had to innovate around drills. We had to innovate around our behaviours. We had to innovate around our mindset, and all along just keeping things simple. Keep it simple, move forward. Keep it simple, move forward. So yeah. I think the opportunity for innovation is available for all of us, as we all always have problems. It's just have the courage to step forward, have the courage to do things differently, and always surround yourself with good people. the guy next to you always is going to have a great idea. Players have great ideas, coaches have great ideas. And I think have those open forums about where you think the sport should be. But yeah, tomorrow is always an opportunity to be a better version of today. So if you have those mindsets, keep it simple, always work on problems.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Karl?
Yeah, for me, it's quite similar, I suppose, to Dave in a lot of ways. I'm about, constantly wanting to evolve, not for evolving's sake, but because there's a better way to do things. And that's something that I always try and seek out. Don't get comfortable with my behavior. Don't be comfortable with your success. I'm not impressed by success. I'm impressed by, if I do everything right, if I concentrate on the process and that's really good, then I'll get the outcome on the scoreboard, or I'll get the outcome, I'll win the next set of 6. If I've lost this set of 6, and there's a reason for that. And it's about dealing in, like Dave says, dealing in solutions rather than problems, I don't want to, fixate too much on something on okay, you've lost this tournament. Lots of people measure their success by winning and losing. And if I did that, I would have been out the back door in coaching in about 5 seconds, because I was a loser. I was losing everything. So I don't subscribe to that theory at all. It was about being persistent, being open-minded, changing, constantly being in this state of flux in your own mind, that you're able to accept, to have a good hard look at things and be able to accept your own shortcomings or the things that you could do better, and not being afraid to ask for help. And I think that's one of the big things that I struggled with early, because I wasn't really sure that I belonged. And because I'm quite different, I'm different in, I guess, my philosophies on the game. Like when I start running reverse quickies and the sub box and stuff, the chorus was just, if you listen to other people and stuff, then you would have, again, packed up and gone home, because people didn't understand it and they didn't get it. But I knew that it was right. In my own mind, it was right for the group of athletes that I have. And that's often the thing. People try to replicate what we do at Doyleson or at Hornets or whatever. And, you see lots of people trying to do what we do, but they don't understand the 1%ers that make certain things work. And that's for a reason. We obviously, want to maintain those edges and do those things, but it suits the group of players that I coach. If I coach another group of players, it might be different. A good example was when I coached with Dave. Traddy and Dave had spoken to me about moving, Dave gave me the responsibility of the tack, which, was a massive responsibility. And I really took that on, and I worked in with the other players at Dave's suggestion, and made me so much a better coach with all of those things. But our rucking, we were basically using the sub box, and Dave and Traddy suggested, toggle between the styles, look at some direct rucking, mix it up. And that then gave me an opportunity to manipulate the time clock, to use my own creative bent on it and go, okay, a few minutes before halftime, maybe a minute before halftime, they're expecting us to go to the box. Let's go through the middle. And we scored a touchdown in the grand final off a back set towards that because of that call. But I wouldn't have had the courage to make that call, and I wouldn't have the confidence to make that call if I wasn't open-minded and I wasn't prepared to listen to two guys who obviously knew what they do. On status, they could have told me, get back in your box and do it, but they left the decision in my hands, and they gave me the ability to either, jump on the rope and pull myself up and become a better coach, or be stubborn and stick where I was and stick to philosophies and ideas and things that I thought would work. But I knew in my heart of hearts that wasn't the best outcome for the team. So, experiences like that, they're golden, And so for me, my philosophy changes all the time because it has to. The game, as Dave said early on in this conversation, the game's so fast and it changes just like that. If you're away for 6 months, tremendous changes happens because we've got so many innovators and people who are constantly trying new things, or what old is new again. It was really interesting. A lot of the teams are now doing a little play that that they dump and they split and they switch back from the ruck, and people call it an apples, or they do whatever. And I remember 22 odd years ago in the Metro Cup, my sister and I combined, we called it a scissors switch, gave it to a girl named Nat Wilkinson, who was a world beach sprint champion, who dived over and scored, and Crushers beat Billy's team, who'd been undefeated like premiers, and Crushers won 4-3 with that play. So when the boys were running it at training the other day, they go, oh, look, we'll show you this. I go, yeah, been done 22 years ago, but don't worry about it. It's like, it's one of these things that what's old is new again. And it's sort of one of those things that, you know, it comes and goes in the sport a lot. And I think, you know, having that sort of attitude and that philosophy that you're prepared to be open-minded and flexible, coach different divisions, get the experience, get out of your comfort zone. Don't be content in just coaching. You know, like when I went and coached the men's 35s, I'd never coached senior touch in my life. And I was going, holy heck, what am I doing here? And this is really, and trying to get the boys to play men's open style, because, you know, we're playing against a New Zealand side that had 3 ex-New Zealand men's open, you know, captains, and I had the guys that were, and they won't mind saying that, like, you know, a lot of other, they'd chosen a lot of other, you know, teams to play in that they could have played mixed or whatever, because they realised it was a really tough assignment, you know, to try to beat New Zealand in this division. Like, I had the choice to coach the men's 30s or the men's 35s, and Traddy said, you know, 35s is going to be a lot harder, and I said, well, yeah, give me the hard one, because I want to actually, you know, try and coach at the highest level I possibly can and push myself and challenge myself and the players around me. And obviously with that time, that team, like having Davidson Eddie as a captain and all my senior players, Ryan Pollock, you know, guys like that had been around the sport a lot, and tremendous people. We helped like the 10 other rookies who'd never, some of these guys, they get their jersey, they're like, you know, they're 34 years old and they're bawling their eyes out getting their Australian jersey, because they never thought that they would actually ever get to do this. You know, that's what I had a team of, that, and, you know, and Zanetti, and like Ryan was probably 10 kilograms over his normal playing weight. You know, we had guys who were probably in no real state to be there, but we ended up winning the World Cup because we had such a good work ethic and an attitude, and our 1%ers were good. And these are all the things. It was being open-minded in, like, okay, how do I approach coaching these guys? How's that different to them when I coach the under 18s and prepare them for a series, you know? And then I go back and how do I work with Doilo, and then how do I work with Hornets? Because there are different players. Even though Hornets have a strong Doilo flavour, we also have young guys from Beresfield and stuff who are emerging talents, from Central Coast, from you know, Newcastle, from all over the place. So giving them, you know, again, that's reinventing. That's going, all right, just doing what we do at Doilo is not going to work here, because it's a different flavour again. And if you don't come with that attitude that you want to innovate and change and you want to do it if it's not working. I'm not saying if things are working for you, that old saying, you know, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. Like Dave said, you can keep it simple in like lots of things, but there are times as a coach when you just know in your heart, and he alluded to it just before, when you know that this isn't working, like with the mixed, with the flat line, having to move to the flat line from the eye, you know that the attack has progressed to a certain point, that defense is not going to get it done anymore. And then you have to be brave and you have to back yourself, whether that's a situation with a technical aspect or it's a decision about whether somebody comes into your program or you need to drop a player for, you know, an indiscretion and they're a popular player or whatever it is that goes on. These are the hard decisions, you know. They say there's only 2 types of coaches, those that are sacked and those that are waiting to be sacked. It's pretty much like that. But you enjoy it while you've got the opportunity, Ben, and you do your very best. And I think everybody recognises that in coaching, it's a fairly thankless task. So if you're looking for pats on the back and you're looking for people to like boom you up, you know, like you're something special, then you're in the wrong space. It's about just trying to make differences with people. And Dave will tell you some of the best things that you get out of coaching. Like, you know, I think over the last few years, 9 of the boys have had their first children. Being able to be a part and seeing how happy they are and how they've grown from young men into responsible dads, and, you know, bedtimes at a certain time when it'd be like, oh no, I'm not going out tonight, I can't do that, I've got to get home, I've got, you know, we've got work the next day, I've got the kids, or, you know, kids going from school and going into trades or going, you know, into careers, and they're the things, going to their weddings and their engagements and their things and their 21sts, and, you know, they're the things that you can't replace, and they're the friendships that our sport offers, you know. And as a coach, you have a tremendous opportunity to be a link in their lives, and I find that part of coaching the most gratifying of all, and that underpins my philosophy more than ever. You know, it's just about, you know, being as good as you can for them and to help, you know, them become the best people and the best players that they can possibly be.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Thanks so much, both of you, for sharing that. Really, yeah, inspiring stuff. So part of this initiative for us in our kind of high performance program, we've got, and Dave alluded to it earlier, we're sort of having a well-being and wellness weekend, and empowering our athletes with, you know, how to deal with the stuff off the field, and mental health, and lots of other workshops. And we're quite in tune and engaged with athlete assessment, which I know TFA have been involved with for years, and the help of Bo and Liz has just been fantastic for our high performance athletes. So I wonder if you could just sort of give us a bit of insight into sort of how you go about promoting mental health and well-being with your athletes that you're working with in a high performance capacity. And then also, you know, how do you deal with that yourselves as coaches working in a high pressure environment as well?
Yeah, I'll go first, Karley. I think 2 years ago, when I moved from predominantly being a men's coach and then also underpinning, you know, the Women's Premier League at Hills Hornets, my first sort of foray into girls was that there was a lot of high level of low confidence in girls, especially young girls. And at first I think, well, that's a major problem. It's throughout the whole sort of community. And then the realization that it probably exists in boys as well, but they just hide it a little bit more. So yeah, from that, the positive affirmations, the conversations you have, you try and spend more time on the relationship side, trying to understand the personal life. Not really qualified in that space, so, you know, I've just tried to focus on the relationships. I think we launched an app just prior to TFA launched an app for the elite sort of high performance program just prior to the last campaign. I'm not quite sure how successful that's been. I still think personal contact, phone calls, talking with people, identifying patterns, whether they change their behaviour, whether their energy levels are high or low, and just listening and being there for people. So it's contacting and relationship and awareness, I think, is the main things that we can do as support people in our community of touch. In terms of the high performance, probably seen with our group probably three sort of segments. Certain players that are still engaged and want to be engaged, and then there's a core group that are happy either way to follow online initiatives, and there's another group that are struggling just to define the engagement because there's not the what or why is still there for them. So again, just phone calls, talking to them, listening, and progressing through that. I think Mon Wallace put up a question about return to sport from COVID lockdowns. So we had that through Hills Hornets just recently, and as a group, we focused on getting players on the park and the community. So we put the competitives to the side for a bit and just said, look, we've got to get the social aspect up. We've got to monitor our players. We've got to make sure that the physical loads of training and competition are progressive. So we had Michael Donoghue, who's an EP, give us some guidance around a 6-week program in terms of monitoring loads at training and then slowly increasing that just to prevent injury. So yeah, we had a whole different focus coming back. Probably post Borden Cup and entering into State Cup allowed us to increase the level of competition a bit. But we've got to be mindful that every player just doesn't play touch. They have other sports as well, and have similar return to sports needs. And we're starting to see a little bit of injury across the portfolio that is Scorpions, just because there's increased loads that we weren't previously used to. So again, we've got to be really mindful of the well-being in terms of players' health, in terms of their thought process, in terms of engagement, and then be careful about how we load them up back into competition.
Yeah, that's great, Dave. And Carl, I wonder if you could sort of focus on, as a coach, how do you take care of your own mental health and well-being when you're in high pressure environment, you've got the athletes you're working with, your coaching team as well. Bit of insight there, if you would.
Yeah, and this is the thing, is that so being a bit of a touch head and living and breathing the game, I found over the last few years, like been having my little escapes being able to, watch my Netflix and go for like a swim, because pretty much when I'm in the water and I'll swim 5Ks, I'll swim a long way. So pretty much no one can get to me under the water. So it's sort of my way of just clearing my mind and feeling good about myself. When I sort of started showing a lot more self-care around those sorts of aspects, my coaching improved, because I'm a fairly intense character, believe it or not. No, true. And it's been a lot of learning about just, being a lot more relaxed and stuff. But that doesn't happen without practice. If you're not naturally inclined to be, I've always been, quite an anxious person and very sort of like that. And I identify those. And I guess with other athletes and coaches, I pick up on that stuff. I like to think I'm quite a perceptive person. I'm quite honest, like who I am on Facebook in my posts and who I am, whatever, that's me. There's no facade. There's nothing else. I'm very honest. And I think that helps me in terms of like, if I'm dealing with stuff, I don't often hide from those sorts of things. I'll confront, if I've had a bad day coaching or I've had a bad day, doing whatever, then, I'm quite able to talk to that. And I think Dave said, like, having good people around you, mentors, family, friends, loved ones who you can go to, and this year's been quite, even just now, like I've been working in Queensland, New South Wales, just got a new position with Caboolture Touch, sort of doing their high performance participation and pathways manager role. So I'm juggling everything in New South Wales and Queensland. I wish I could clone myself at times, but that whole self-care stuff, whether it was COVID or not, this has been something that's been really, really important for me. Just making sure you get enough sleep, making sure you eat well. Like often, when we were in Malaysia, when I coached with Dave, one of the things that he sort of said to myself and Phil, our manager, who's a good friend of Dave's as well, we need to be on top of what we were doing. So, while the boys were having, their hydration tablets, we had to keep all that stuff up. We had to be sharp. We had to make sure we were well rested and that we were on the ball so that the boys could be on the ball, and that was another good lesson in terms of where in the past it's almost like, well, no, you sit up late doing your video reviews, you don't eat well, you don't do whatever, you forget about your sunscreen, you forget about doing the little things that actually help you be at your very best. And I was a little bit disrespecting the people that I was working for, meaning my players and stuff like that, by not doing that. And I think during COVID, it gave you a great opportunity to reflect on those things. I've always had a really good rapport with most of my players because I suppose I'm not perfect. I haven't had a perfect life. I haven't had everything go right for me, or like lots of people. And I'm more than happy to say, I have an Indigenous background. My sexuality is I don't know. I like a bit of everything. I'm all over there. I'm just a person who I'm very normal, and I have and I don't mind being myself with people because I want them to feel like that trust and that respect and that mutual type thing, that we're on the same level. Whether I'm coaching them or whether I'm in a position of authority, like I'm more than happy to try to encourage those types of relationship things that Dave alluded to. I think we're not experts. We're not sports psychologists. We're not, we can't solve all of those problems for people in their lives. But what we can do is provide an ear and we can listen. And COVID's been very, very hard on lots of people across the sport. And I thought New South Wales Touch in particular did a great job. Queensland Touch did, TFA, everybody, in terms of the kids had ball challenges instead of, and TikTok challenges and things like that, where the kids could all get involved and keep their spirits up. The Emus did a whole heap of tips for people. We did different things at Dorlo for the kids and wherever you could sort of, so I think every request I got from a coach during COVID, no matter how flat out I was, I replied to and wrote extensive stuff. That doesn't make me any better than anyone else, but I'm thinking if I'm doing that, if Dave's doing that, if you're doing that, Benny, if there's everybody out there around the world doing that for each other, then we're going to put everybody in a better place to get through this really horrible time that everybody's had to confront. I feel for all my friends in Chile and like you guys, third lockdown, like all of that sort of stuff, who have just had the game sort of wrenched out of their grasp and not be able to do something that they love so much. And, you know, so when I'm tired, so last night it was pouring down rain at Caboolture when we were doing their Junior State Cup trials, and I was freezing driving home to Redlands about an hour, and it was whatever. And the whole time I'm thinking, gee, I'm lucky. I actually get to do this. So you guys would love an opportunity like that. So rather than sit around whinging about, you know, about being cold or, you know, getting a bit wet, I'm pretty happy that I'm able to do what I do, and anything that we can do to help anybody, you know, during this time, you know, it's a small price that I'm sure, you know, anybody who's able to, you know, continue coaching or playing or doing whatever would be happy to do, you know, even if it's little like messages for people to sort of boost them along or give them a hand with a training program or a drill, you know, that's a very small price. And I think just having a good mindset, like often when something bad happens, you know, people fixate, you know, on the fact that this horrible thing's just happened. You know, it might be the loss of a loved one. It might be, you know, like you've lost your job. It might be, you know, you've lost a big game. You've done whatever the cause of consternation is. We tend to focus on that rather than see that there's probably 5 other positive things going on, including the fact that we probably get a chance to do it all again. You know, we get to live the next day. We get to do something else. So there's always a positive in whatever happens to you. And I think in the times where during my life that I've, you know, been through stages where I've been depressed or bad stuff's happened, I've managed to drag myself out with the help of a lot of other people around me. But I'm very grateful for that. And I think that if we're all very honest and open about where we sit, I think people always talk about mental health days. I think we all need mental health days. You know, this isn't a thing that, you know, is new. It's been there. We just didn't have a label for it before. And now it's all just about us getting in and understanding that, you know, if you've got a choice, that thing, choose kind. Like, I understand everybody's fighting a battle that, you know, we know nothing about. And it's really, really important that we all bind together and do what we can, you know, to make this world a better place just by being a good human being to the next person. I don't think that's too much, you know, to ask from anyone.
Yeah, I mean, brilliant. Thank you so much to both of you for that insight. Like, yeah, we'll have to clip that and share that with everyone. I think just words of wisdom all over the place was brilliant. Look, we've got one more question we'll come to, but I think we'll just dive into a couple of the questions that have come in the chat, because I'm conscious of time and, you know, start of your days, and I've had you up early. So we'll sort of be quick fire on answering these. Couple of questions here from some of our national head coaches, actually. So there's 2 questions here from Andy Sharps, and I'll just flash it on the screen here for Carl and Dave to take a look at. So from a squad selection, club, regionally and national side, do you select athletes who are skilled but maybe lacking the right attitude over positive attitude athletes who might not be as skilled?
Yeah, I'll go. I think Karley spoke about it before, like the culture at TFA, high performance. But you don't get through the door if you're a dickhead. So if you've got poor attitude, you go to the bottom of the rung. It doesn't matter how good a player you are, you're just not going to cut it. Anyone who's been in the heat of a test match or heat of a World Cup, in playing against the best teams, culture gets you across the line. Footy is a large component, but you can't be at your best unless you've got a group of people that have like minds and ego isn't on the table. Because adversity always comes knocking, and you need strong culture, you need buy-in, you need people with like minds. So if you don't have the right attitude, that's a pretty easy one for us. You're not going to get through the door.
And I think just to add, like, if you see the potential in someone, I often look at an athlete who's like that, who has what we term a bad attitude, or they're not coachable, and I wonder why. And I'm feeling maybe I'm invested in every bleeding heart that comes along, but it's one of those things that I do like to get to the bottom of it if I can. If I see real true potential that they could be a better human being, but their background hasn't been great, they haven't had the best opportunities, they haven't had this or that, then I like to know. And I like to see what I can do to help them find their strength to be better. But sometimes, as Dave has alluded to, then you have to be careful that you're not, penalising the good eggs. I think off air, we talked about Rick Charlesworth, and one of his things that he said, I remember I heard him speak at a luncheon in Brisbane when I was an athlete, when I was about 22, 23. And I remember him saying that as coaches, we spend 80% of our time on the problem children. Why do we do that? And he said, simple, don't select the problem children to start with. So it was sort of quite interesting in terms of, that type of thing. I honestly think that, as Dave says, you need people who are all on board, who are all heading in the right direction. Take your seat on the bus and off we go. I think the process before that, in terms of understanding where we're going, how we're going to do, that's very collaborative. And if everybody gets an opportunity to have a say and feels invested in the process, you're going to have less and less of that attitude stuff, being around this, the traps. So yeah, it's a bit of a balancing act, but I'm with Dave on that. I'd go with the attitude over the skilled athlete every day of the week.
Oh, brilliant, thank you. And then another one from Andy here. So squad statistical analysis. Do you look at multi-level KPIs or high level? Keep them simple, and if so, how much looks at the human element of work ethic and self-discipline as opposed to just data and statistics?
Yeah, I'll go. We do run some sort of KPIs around fitness. So we run the Broncos, and we run also Illinois, which is speed agility, change of direction tests. They don't sort of weight into the discussion around you're in or you're out, but it does give us some insight in terms of if there's a 50-50 decision, whether you go with a player that offers a little bit more fitness. Around the other KPIs, I think it's more awareness around the standards that you set for your culture, which dovetails into the previous question around attitude. So you've got to be clear around the standards for the group, and they get educated from day one very clearly. Minimum standards and what's not tolerated. So in terms of that, in terms of footy, not so much. Like the guys that we get, we've already vetted that they can play footy. There's to get to an Australian squad, I can't just select a person. Two other people also have to vet them. So, if you get through that food chain, you're a good football player. It's the other non-footy stuff that we've got to educate them on, behavioural standards, getting fit, and working in the high performance group.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Dave. And Karl, go for it.
Yeah, to me, it's sort of a little bit of a combination of both. So let's say I'm running a skill drill or something like that. It's not a skill drill for the sake of running it. There's an outcome, so if my ball players are there, if we're doing a 4-on-3 drill, I'm expecting, Alex Langridge to hit 4 or 5 of his left to right passes where he needs to hit them, in the zone. And I'm getting an idea of whether he's hitting his marks in terms of that. If it's Jesse Jenkins and he's the winger and he's got to get a read, how many reads is he getting right in that activity? And they're the things that KPI happens. But see, those things don't happen. Then we play we might play a full field game, and I keep the stats. I do stats as it runs the game. I've got a unique way of doing that, and I give the boys the stats straight after we finish a 20-minute full field run, and I can say this many sets, this is what happened. We didn't get through the first 3, past the first 3 on 12 occasions of the 22 sets. So this means that our ruck area stuff's not there. So those sorts of statistical things, statistics for the sake of statistics are rubbish, but for a thing of this is our benchmark in terms of us getting creating back end flow, this is what's got to happen. So those types of statistical things do play a part, but see, if the work ethic and the attitude isn't right about being selfless and being determined to take the ball to the box or to do the things that you've got to do aren't there, then those figures, those KPI figures that you're talking about, they will fall down anyway. So it's a combination of both.
Yeah, thanks. Really, really good. And Karl, this one's directed at you, but Maddie Harper's sort of allowed you to weigh in if you want, Dave, as well. Just a question around sort of the approach you took in structuring the coaching campaign for the Australian Men's 35s at Touch World Cup, and he just follows that up with, and I'll flash this up on the screen now for you as well. Given the presumed limitations on time, the mixture of abilities, players possibly set in their ways relative to coaching a men's open Dawson team. And I know you touched on this a little bit earlier, but yeah, could you give us a little bit on that? Yeah,
100%. Yeah, all of those things that you mentioned were definitely, considerations. When we started, I ran the selection weekend on my own. I didn't have an assistant coach or a manager. I was just running it on my own. And, we had a number of high-profile players who, probably, thought that their best area of playing was sort of elsewhere. And obviously it was putting together a group of players who I thought could play a style of game that would beat New Zealand. I was aware of the calibre that New Zealand had in terms of the players they had available to them. They were defending world champions from the division last time. And having come through that era, I was aware of all their sort of players. So I was looking for a certain type of group of players to fill these roles. And I don't think any of those boys will say that, would be offended if I said I probably didn't get some of the things I was looking for. So I had to readjust my game plan to suit the calibre of players that I had. And these guys did their very best over, we had 2 camps, so we had a short limited time, but a lot of the coaching was by correspondence too. And this is something that Dave and I did well with the youth boys as well. And it's in terms of, like weekly phone, discussions, clips to the boys, to the older boys about things that I needed them to do, talking about their role, what they were comfortable with, going back and forwards until we were all good, relying on the leadership group in terms of that. And a lot of the attitudes and the things that I'd learned going to Malaysia and preparing for that with the Youth World Cup gave me a great insight into the physical preparations. My sister Sharon is a physiotherapist who works for Hornets and does stuff like that. So I got Shaz into the training camps, and because we knew we wouldn't be able to have someone to do all of the, pre-recovery and the stuff like that. So Sharon took Ryan Pollock, who is like, captain of the Australian Open mixed to World Cup wins and just a legend of a guy, phys ed teacher, loves all that stuff. And so Sharon kept quoting this, like, this Oxford study says that this. And so Ryan kept saying, well, the Oxford study shows that if you do this type of recovery. And so he became the catalyst for all of our good recoveries. And those guys at that age, they probably weren't used to doing that, to the degree that we were with our chalky milk drinks at the end of the day, Dave, and all the other stuff. So these guys, to their tremendous credit, at 34, 35, some of them are older than that, got on board with all the 1%ers that I wanted them to do. And, that was tremendously important in terms of the technical side of it. The game that we ran, it was a version of what we do at Doilo. It was a sub-box pattern. I remember being in the Malaysia final and it being so hot, and I'm the only person in the sub-box because our 4 guys run off the field. And then when we got the ball again, 4 guys had come out from the tent and they'd joined me, in the sub-box momentarily. So coaching in that type of situation was a very interesting sort of thing. But the campaign itself, I had a great leadership group. Dave Zanetti has to be one of the world-class leaders in our sport, regardless of age, what he's done with the North Queensland Cowboys, even still being their captain when it was the NRL Touch premiership, still leading the CQ Bulls. He's a leader of men. And having a guy like that as your right-hand man was tremendously important for me. But getting the guys to buy in was it. And we did a scrimmage against the men's 30s. It was the last training camp. And, the day before, our defence had been horrible because they were just going back to old habits. They were shutting down hard. They were doing stuff like that. And I couldn't have it because I knew that we were going to be in a lot of trouble. And I pulled them in and said, look, if you guys want to change the defence totally, I said, I can tell you we're going to get lapped. And I said, so you need to trust me on this, and you need to try this against the 30s because they're younger. And if you use this defence, they're going to be of the calibre of what New Zealand are, agility-wise, all that stuff. You've got to back me in on this. And so we did it the next morning, and we actually won the line attack and defence scrimmage. They'd flogged us in every other thing because we didn't have compliance and trust in the defensive policy and the shape that we were looking for. So I walked away from that session, that last defensive line attack and defence scrimmage, feeling confident that we ticked it off. Dave always talks about a mental list of ticking the boxes. We need to tick this by the end of the camp. Can you tick that? Can you tick that? And I could tick that last box that was worrying me around our line attack and line defence. And that got down to the attitude of the boys in buying in and backing what I wanted them to do, and it worked tremendously for us in New Zealand. A lot of these guys played above their weight too. It's that whole point. So many guys grateful to just get an Australian jersey, and some of these guys, they never even made a New South Wales or a Queensland team before, and they stepped up and they won a World Cup. They beat, probably what was the shortest price favourites ever. And that was off the back of these guys' attitude, commitment, doing the 1%ers right, following the game plan. But that's not unlike what the Australian under-18 boys gave me, as well. A lot of those boys in that 18s team, there were a lot of critics who said, I picked the wrong side because, they weren't big names or they weren't whatever. Young Jardel Bob was 15, 2016, saying, he's too young to play, and there's all this stuff, and he's an absolute superstar now. I'm not saying I told you so, but I know that he was the right guy for what I needed him to do in that position. A young kid from Benmore couldn't make the QSST team, but he was a working middle who worked with a guy that David coached, Liam Robinson, who's a very, very fast guy. He needed a worker who would be selfless and roll his sleeves up and give him a platform. And Benny Moore, little tough kid from Toowoomba who no one knew, came in, did his job tremendously, and did the thing for the group. Dave's 2018 World Cup winning 20 side. Lots of people would say there's a lot of other guys who have probably were more better athletically. Guys like Luke Kane and Bailey Ritchie and stuff who probably could have made Dave's side. Dave went for some other guys who would give him the defensive solidity that he needed, give him the compliance in terms of the game plan, and we got the result. And that's one of those things that as a coach you get a gut feeling about who you need in a certain situation, in a certain position, and, you just have to run with that and you need to back yourself. And the really good ones, do that and you wear it, whether you win or you lose. If you walk into that game, into that tournament feeling like, yep, I've considered every single angle on this and I've come up with the best team I possibly could, you can live and die with the result.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. It's brilliant. Dave, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think that dovetails into Andy's question about skill versus attitude. You can't go to Malaysia without a group that's willing to change. So both tournaments, the Youth World Cup and the Opens program and the Masters program, Seniors program, if you weren't willing to listen and take the advice of the experts about your health and well-being outside of footy, you're going to end up in the dustbin. So it was really critical that through the selection process that we had to be aware of players that we thought were capable of that change. Because in the end, the Youth World Cup, I think Karley touched on it before, that New Zealand probably had 4 or 5 men's Opens players in the team and arguably probably better athletes. We were going to win that tournament on the back of being a better team and doing the 1%ers and getting to the point where we're in the final and we were fitter than those. And that the plan worked out and we ran over the top of them. But going to the point about selection, about people, we had to pick people that we thought that could, live in our program because it was going to be difficult. So imagine taking adults to Malaysia is one thing, but taking young kids to a foreign country.
Not sure what's going on there.
Bit of kickback.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. So taking young kids to a foreign country, foreign language, different food, different culture, then you throw in the environment. It's crazy. So you got to really have a look at and weigh in on the fact that you think you got the right level of person that can handle that program viewpoint.
It's fantastic. Thanks very much. So, look, last question of the session, and I wonder if you could both give us sort of a high and a low of your touch careers so far. Might be difficult to pick out just sort of one, particularly when it comes to the highs. But I wonder if you could give us a high and a low of the touch career so far.
Yeah, I'll go first, Karley. I think the low for me probably a major injury. I think in the mid-20s and then again in 30s suffered back injuries, which was very debilitating and takes a long time to recover. So sometimes it's like everything, when you take something away and you don't have it, you appreciate it more. So you have those moments of doubt whether you'll ever get back on the paddock. But fortunate enough, get back on your feet and get well again. So the highs, like you say, every time I I go out and represent Australia, I sort of pinch myself. Pretty hard to go past either World Cup, the youth one, or the latest World Cup because of the challenges. Probably just put the Opens World Cup with the mixed program slightly ahead of the Youth World Cup, just on the fact that, you know, the coaching group was quite unique. We had Justin, Mick Lovett and myself, and the group of players were just outstanding. And the week itself, I remember getting from Monday to Friday and Friday night feeling totally exhausted on the Friday night, thinking, wow, we've just been through 5 days of a marathon and tomorrow we've got to be at our best for 45 minutes in the final and it's going to be a sprint. How the hell do we do that? And I was mentally fatigued. So I talk about wellbeing. It's, you know it's coming, but you don't know it's coming. So that was a real challenge. And then in the final, we all found that stability where the game just slowed down. Everyone did the job, and probably picture perfect coaching from all three of us, and the players responded as well, and we got the job done. So yeah.
Oh, that's great, Dave. And how about you, Karl?
I think there's been some feedback. You there?
Yeah, we've got you just on a bit of an echo there. I don't know what's going on.
I'm not sure what's happening, mate. Let's try. Are you there?
Yeah, we've got you just on an echo.
How can we try and fix it, mate?
Yeah, I don't think it's my end. I'd mic myself.
Yeah,
and it wasn't
yeah.
me.
Now. Hang on. Give me 2 seconds. We good now?
There we go. Got you now.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Yeah, I think disappointment-wise, I think there's been a lot of lows, but that's okay. It's all been a part of the journey in making me a better player and a person. I was one of the last people cut from a World Cup once after, I had a thing called Epstein-Barr. I got very, very sick for 7 months, worked really, really hard to get back in and I got dropped. At the last minute, myself and Renee Murphy, of all people, who's now in our Australian coaching staff as well. We were the last 2 players cut from a World Cup once, and that was a pretty disappointing experience as a player. But I worked really hard and I got back and managed to play, State of Origin the next year for Women's Open and got myself back into the game. And I always find myself that whether it's been that or it's been coaching disappointments where I've been overlooked for positions or whatever it is. And I'm not whinging about any of those types of situations. It's been about learning and coming back and being better. And I think when you sort of listen to, like Traddy always talks about, the dogs will always bark, but the caravan moves on. And he talks about that all the time. And it's just about backing yourself. And he's obviously been a tremendous influence on my career. He's been the one who's probably kicked my butt more than anybody else. But when I've done stuff right, he's also been in my corner. And, I've been tremendously fortunate by all the experiences that I've had, Ben. And I think staying humble and being grateful for, each of those experiences, particularly in hindsight, you can look back and go, yeah, there's a lot of things. The trick is when it's happening to you and it's not a particularly pleasant experience, it's how you deal with that. And so when we've lost big things, when we've lost recently, even like 2019, we lost, the Vorden Cup Grand Final to Bankstown, how you carry yourself and how you conduct yourself in those moments is massively important. And I remember very early on when I lost the 20s mixed, Trans-Tasman, it was like 13-12, ridiculous scoreline. Anyway, I lost the series and the players were crying and I was crying and Traddy got into me, and rightly so, that I should have been composed and held myself together in that moment. But it meant so much that I felt like I left I let the whole country down. And in private, I could have had my cry and done whatever, but I didn't. And that was a bad thing. And it took me, that was a bit of a nightmare that sat with me for a little while. And but this is the evolution, as a coach, and learning from your mistakes and being better. And so, I'd say that the highlights are getting through all of that and becoming a better person and a better quality coach as a result of that journey. So it's not winning this and winning that and, having all of those things. They're very, very nice. But like I said to you, all of those achievements, they don't happen without the efforts of a combined group of people, so many people, like no one ascends alone. And, that's probably one of the big things that I remember, is that like I'm tremendously lucky to be in the position I am because of the efforts of so many people around me. Yes, I work my butt off and I try really hard, and I would say to anybody who thinks that, I've gotten an easy ride or I've had it, it hasn't been like that. It's been tremendous. It's been hard work. It's like this when you see the swan sitting on the top of the water. What's going on underneath? The legs are going 1,000 miles an hour just to stay in it, And that's how I feel, all the time, every single day with everything that I do. But I'm tremendously thankful for all those opportunities, Ben. And when we get the win, I'll celebrate with the best of them. But when I lose, I'm good enough to go over and shake hands with the other guy or, whoever it is, the other girl, and say, thank you very much for the game. Too good on the day. That's it. And if you can do that every single time, then I think you're at a point where you're very comfortable with yourself and you're very balanced, and, it makes the coaching process so much easier, and it makes the development as a person, you're so much more well-rounded. And so for all the wins and all the losses and the highs and the lows, I'm just grateful, mate.
Look, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. And look, to both of you, thanks so much for the couple of hours we've spent together a little bit beforehand as well, and joining us so early in the morning. We're really grateful to just get any insight and hear all about sort of your experiences. And I appreciate we probably only touched the surface, but absolutely brilliant from our perspective to hear from two of the best coaches in the game right now. So thanks, Dave. Thanks, Karl, for your time. We really appreciate it.
I wish you all the best for the weekend. Is it this weekend you're running it?
Yeah, this weekend.
Okay. Well, good luck, and it's a great initiative, and looking forward to hearing how well it goes.
Yeah, Benny, thank you so much for having us along. And to any of the coaches, I know there's some more questions and things like that. If you guys want to, hit me up. I won't speak on Dave's behalf because I know he's always tremendously busy all the time, but I'm sure he would get back to you too if you had any questions that you wanted to direct to us personally or privately or whatever. Then please, anytime you want to reach out, then very happy to do what we can. And Ben, all the work that England Touch is doing at the moment is just tremendous. You guys have made tremendous inroads. Last World Cup was fantastic results for you guys. Love how professional you are. I love how you're trying to get your 1%ers in order. It's just tremendous for the game, like globally, but full of admiration for what you're doing, mate, and you're doing an outstanding job. So well done to you on this, and for all the other things that you're doing, to get England Touch, up the top, where they belong.
Yeah, thanks, Karl. As you guys know, massive team effort that goes on, and it's exactly the same for you guys. So look, thanks so much to those watching. We've got a few more interviews coming up in the next few days, so stay tuned on the YouTube page and check out those live streams coming up. But thanks again, Dave. Thanks again, Karl, and have a good evening, everyone else.